And they were doing that before I decided to brand myself the No Bullshit Guy.
Have
That's
you
the
registered it as a
reason for it.
trademark?
I haven't. No, I haven't. I
Well,
probably should.
Then you're not really this No Bullshit
No,
guy, are you? You don't own it.
no,
We could
no.
all
But
be no.
but
We
that's
could
how
all
it
be no.
started.
Yeah.
People just come up to me and be like, "Oh, you're the No Bullshit Guy," and then I'll be like, "Oh yeah." So eventually, I was like, "All right, fuck it. I'll just
Have you
make that my
Googled
brand."
yourself? Have you Googled yourself as the No Bullshit guy?
Yeah,
Does
yeah.
it
It
come up
comes
for you?
up.
Does
It
it?
comes
Does
up.
it? I
Yeah,
didn't
yeah,
do
yeah,
it.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I did a thing on ChatGPT even where I asked ChatGPT, I was like, "Who are some no bullshit advisors that work in the startup world?" Or something like that along those lines. It took several attempts, but I was just experimenting, and then eventually my name came up along with like Mark Cuban and like some other people. I was like right down there. I was like, yes.
I thought maybe you said, ChatGPT, tell me who a No Bullshit advisor is that's got a Scottish surname.
Yeah, yeah. Even though I have no Scottish heritage whatsoever.
Yes.
Did I tell you the story about that?
You did in our intro call, yes, because I
Yeah,
asked you.
yeah. So for the benefit of those, because I can't say something like that and then not tell people.
No.
So yeah, my father was from Northern Ireland, but his surname was originally something else. But he wanted to change his surname when he moved. I think it was when he moved to England to something that sounded more Irish because it didn't sound Irish enough.
Yeah, I
And he
remember
picked
the
a
Irish
fucking Scottish
connection,
name.
actually. Yeah.
So there you go. That tells you everything you need to know about my dad. But well, look, we're coming towards the end. So what I'd like to do usually, not always, but sometimes in this show towards the end, is throw it over to you. What are some of the things that you think we're not maybe talking about enough in the startup world, in the ecosystem? There's obviously a lot going on right now politically. There's a lot going on in the sort of grassroots side of things. Are there things on your mind that you think that need to get a bit more attention, do you think?
That's a great question. The two things that spring to mind if I think around investment, one is risk aversion and one is financial modelling. Risk aversion, I always think if I'd taken London United to America, I would have raised a shitload of cash because they recognise entrepreneurship, they recognise concepts, and they'll back you with money. They don't get hung up over valuation. Cross the pond to the UK, it's complete opposite, isn't it? The risk aversion is just to a different level. So I think that what's that down to? Is it the mindset? Is it the country? Is it the government? Is it, I know we've got SEIS and EIS, but is there enough to encourage investors to be less risk averse? I think when we're raising money, we then get hung up on valuations and financial models. And once you start raising and then your financial model isn't anywhere near where it needs to be, like how do you address that going forward? I don't think there's enough discussion around that. And actually, it's something that I would welcome your view on, but maybe after this. So for me, I look at that, and then we've got that dads group. It's quite interesting how often mental health pops up in it, and I think we all have those dark days where you can't talk to your partner because they just don't really understand what you're doing, or they don't understand why you're putting yourself through it. They've never been an entrepreneur. My wife's a makeup artist. My biggest bug with her is that she doesn't market herself properly. Like if you marketed yourself, you'd have a really even better business than you've got, right? But if she can't get in that mindset, she is not going to understand what I am going through. So who can I talk to? And there aren't really enough people out there to talk to. You've got to have broad shoulders as a founder. And probably a few years ago, I don't ever like to talk about mental health as it being a mental health issue, but probably it possibly was. But I didn't know who to talk to in those circumstances. I literally decided on days that I might not want to get out of bed. I had 3 kids. I'd go to the gym. I'd come back. I'd do breakfast. I'd do the school run, and then I would just get back in the hot seat, so to speak, the gaming seat, back in the grind. Because no one really, other than your parents, your wife, your family, are going to feel sorry for you. You've decided to go on this journey. You've got to front it up. And there's probably not enough support for founders out there that are going through really, really difficult challenges. You know what it's like. You might need the investment to come in on a certain day, and if it doesn't come in, it sends you spiraling into distress because you can't pay bills, and you've got letters before action waiting for you potentially. And again, it goes back to being at the behest of other people's timescales, but I don't think there's enough support there for founders. So those are probably the 3 things.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely spot on. I think, to add to the last point around, when things are stressful or going wrong or whatever, which is usually the case when you're a founder anyway, regardless of what stage you're at, there's always something going wrong. I mean, I just think back to kind of men's mental health in general, which is that no one gives a shit. And this is just my perspective. You might disagree with this, but what I've kind of come to terms with over the years is, being a man that, especially that's suffered with mental health issues for a very long time, is generally No one wants to hear it.
Mm.
No one wants to hear a man moan,
Yeah.
you know. And when you do open your mouth about it, you've got to be very careful on who's around, because if that can affect you, right? And I remember speaking, in fact, in season 1 with a lady that was on the podcast. She asked me a couple of questions about that, and she was like, would you find, it was when I was in sales. She said, if you were struggling in sales, with mental health at the time, working with salespeople, etc., would you have been comfortable to say to your manager, your boss, or your teammates that you were struggling? I was
Yeah.
like, absolutely not. Like, I'd have been eaten alive. And the reality is that for most people, that's the case. I probably would have lost my job. Like,
Yeah.
no one wants to hear a man moan about their mental health. It's just a fact. And then you put on top of that they are a director of a company, a CEO, a founder. It adds this perception like you're in a privileged position as well. So then to be moaning about that from that position, it's then considered even worse. It's like, oh, come on, cry me a river kind of reaction.
Yeah.
And I just don't get that. I just don't get it at all. But I think it's inherently the problem from my perspective. That basically what I'm trying to say is, I think it's actually far deeper. It goes down to just the perception of men with mental health issues as a whole. It's not just related to founders with mental health issues, and the additional complexity built around that, with not being able to be vulnerable because of your
Yeah.
responsibilities and da 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 da. Like, I think there's a much bigger social issue there, which is just men aren't allowed to be vulnerable. Despite what people say, people can say as much as they like that, no, that's not true. It is true.
Yeah, I don't disagree actually with a lot of what you said. I think as well, I remember the period I was going through, and it was COVID, and I've never worked as hard in my life through COVID, because you want to obviously salvage something, and you look at all your friends who are either furloughed or they're still working and they're pulling great salaries, and they've never been as affluent in their lives, and you've at the complete opposite extreme, which just adds to all your other mental health issues, so to speak. But I think you made that quite eloquent actually in describing it. You're not far off.
And well, thank you, but look, it's just my opinion, and based on my lived experience, I guess you could say, which
Yeah,
is a
yeah.
popular phrase to say these days. But then to your other point about risk aversion in this country, where do you think that comes from? Why do you think the UK is like that?
I don't know. Do you know what? I don't know, because we got some hugely successful and wealthy entrepreneurs in this country
Hmm.
that have taken risks and built unbelievable businesses.
Well, and just look
But
at our history as a nation when it comes to
yeah,
industry and the things that we've accomplished. It's always felt like, someone explained it to me really well on a recent episode. They said it feels like the UK is always happy just being second. Like, we're afraid to win. I don't know where that comes from.
I don't know honestly, the first question you've asked me, I can't answer properly. I don't know.
Something to think about.
It's bizarre, isn't it? It's bizarre. You go to all these other countries and they embrace what you're trying to do. And here, even I've had in this round, people say, yeah, I'm going to invest in you, and it's SEIS, but we'll give you the money once I see a little bit more money. But that's not the SEIS. The point is, you've already done your due diligence. You know that you're going to write off the majority of it if the business doesn't work. It's to back up in a company at the stage of where we're at. So you're making life far more difficult for me than it needs to be.
Yeah,
I
take a
don't
few
get
more
it.
risks, investors. If you're
I don't get
listening,
it.
and I know you are, because I know a lot of investors that listen to this show. If you're listening, take a few more risks. For fuck's sake, live life a little bit. Hey, come on,
Yeah.
buck up your ideas. There you go, job done. That's our public service announcement. But no, you're absolutely right, and I wonder if some of it is maybe a bit of a kind of like, we'll allow the US to have the number one spot. It's kind of like that. It's a bit of a
Yeah,
just kind of giving up a little bit. I don't know.
maybe,
It's
maybe,
odd. It's an odd thing.
maybe.
But
You
who
could
knows?
probably
Who
do.
knows?
You could do you could do a whole show on that. You could bring in a
Yeah,
panel, couldn't you, and have a whole show discussion on it.
yeah, and I'm sure